And hello, everybody. I'm Gene King, and this is another episode of the Mediums, Messages, and More podcast. Today, we're going to look into an interesting development regarding paid search and a very telling move by a chief marketing officer in the United States of a leading brand in their industry. So, to summarize, um, the chief marketing officer of Bose, the headphones and speaker producer, his name is Jim Molika, and Jim Molika made some headlines uh, recently because he made a decision to temporarily cease paid search ads across the U.S. market. And his primary reason for doing so was because he had said in an interview that he believed it was, quote, taking too much credit for driving sales. And he said in the interview, um, it's one thing if you type into a search engine, and in this particular case, it was Google. If you type in headphones and my company, my brand, and its products come up in a well placed position in the search. But if it doesn't, and you have to do something as far as a manual search, um, or even if you're doing, even if you're doing things like Alexa or Siri or something like that. His point that he made was it's one thing if you just use the phrase headphones to search, for example, and Bose's products come up in a primary position. That's great. But he said, but on the other hand, if that only happens when someone either literally writes the name of the brand or the specific name of the product and it comes up, then he questioned, well, then what's the sense of paying for search? When to him, it's the same thing as paying for advertising. And it's an interesting debate, and there's been a lot of passionate discussion and disagreement about what Malika was saying. Some folks are saying, well, you know, you're paying for search advertising, so it is advertising, um, and you have the controls of what keywords you can put in your paid search. Um, and often it's less expensive than so-called traditional advertising. Um, others are making the point uh, that if your company and your product is paying for, let's say, display ads on specific outlets, um, then you're also advertising, and that's going to be more expensive than just paying for Google search. Other people are saying they understand what Malika is saying, that if in a case of a large brand that has the capital to spend, if you have to if you have to um, have your search ads literally spell out everything, then that's really not what you're paying for. You're paying for your product, your brand to come up in search in a general very generic search. And there are people who disagree with that, that's not a search. In other words, some people are saying, well, if you're going to search for headphones, then you're going to get, the different companies that produce them. If someone is interested in your particular brand, well, that's on you to make sure that you elevate that brand so that people know what to search for. It's a very interesting debate, and I see both sides. I can see the argument. I can see the argument that if the complaint is if I make headphones and someone just types in headphones and I'm not getting the results that I want, is that expecting too much for a search? Um, because there are uh, paid links now, which is another complaint and issue, totally separate from all of this, is that Google in particular is really getting hammered for how they have changed their search model, and there's so much advertising on the first page of the results now, and not necessarily legitimate, just links, search links. Um, I can understand that if you're going to if you feel that you're compelled to pay for uh, ad placement on the first page of Google, then why pay for the SEO? I can see that. On the other hand, it's a very compelling argument. Well, but if you build the brand and you invest in the brand in all the different ways and you successfully elevate it, people won't need to search generically for headphones. They're going to search for your particular headphones. Nonetheless, as this debate goes on, um, after Malika's decision to pause advertising search ads in the United States market, I'm going a totally different direction, and I'm going to use this particular ongoing debate about paid search ads to reinforce something that I have mentioned on this podcast several times in different episodes, and also in the Substack newsletter, in some articles that I've shared and columns that I've written, and that is, to me, advertising in general has kind of, used up its goodwill with the most consumer based
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
with the most consumer based market in the world, the USA. There is a gluttony, an oversaturation of advertising. It proliferates everywhere. People are sick and tired of it, and it has become intrusive. And whether it is the recent complaints that I'm seeing of people talking about how they don't like the pause ads that are proliferating on their streaming services, where you pause your video and an ad pops up, to when they sign in or sign on to a streaming platform and the home page or the start page is an ad, right? Um, the absolute uh, inundation of advertising in sports everywhere you look, uh, especially in baseball. I think baseball is the most egregious offender in over advertising in their product. You try to watch a baseball game today, and not only are the stadiums absolutely oversaturated with ads, but the television broadcasts of these games now, there's ads that are superimposed on the pitcher's mound. There's ads behind home plate that distract from the game. There are ads that pop up when a certain play is made, and never mind radio. If you ever tried to listen to a radio game, and I don't know how many people still do that, but there must be millions of people who still listen to baseball and radio because practically every baseball team has a radio network of and with professionals that need to get paid, so they must be making the revenue. But if you ever try to listen to a baseball game on the radio, and I just don't want to pick on baseball, it's the same thing with the NFL. Um, the amount of ads or ad reads that have to be done during the course of the game are outrageous. So anyway, we've talked about this on this podcast, and I've written about it on my Substack about the saturation of advertising and how it has really affected marketing, and to the point where consumers are now becoming hostile and indifferent when it comes to advertising and marketing. Well, paid search is what AI is right now. And for those that recall, when search engines really took off, when they really came to the market and they improved themselves, and marketers and advertisers saw this as now this is the gold answer. This is now the key, the solution to everything. People can simply put a search phrase in, and we're going to pop up. And of course, as we know, with everything that's promised in the marketplace, it never really ever lives up to the expectations. Very few things do. There's always there's always roundabouts and pitfalls and other issues. And then the business models change for the providers. And we've seen that with search engines. Wasn't all that long ago that SEO was a cottage industry, and there were professionals, SEO professionals, that made a living, and the only thing that they did was do search engine optimization. That seems a long time ago, a different world. And today, SEO of itself is so highly questioned. There's a lot more cynicism in 2025 about SEO than there was even 10 years ago, when I think there was a lot of good faith and on the surface, wanting to believe that you were going to get, the what was promised. So my thing is, you know, I would say, in my opinion, and based on talking to many different organizations and executives, of all of the advertising that you can do, of all the different marketing channels, I would say what seems to be still one of the most effective is search. Now, it may not be as effective as it once was because search is changing. And the leader, Google, has monetized its search engine to the max. And so there's a lot more competition for ad space. Page one of Google is, think of it as the old newspaper page. And there's only so many advertisements you can put on a page. Well, yeah, I think even Google is saying that it's at a point now where their top page, first page results have gotten so heavy with ads, it has really turned people away um, from using Google, or it certainly doesn't have the credibility and the brand rep that it used to. Besides that, AI is now coming into where it can be used as a search engine, and a lot of people are experimenting with that. And so there's a whole debate about how search is changing, and what AI is going to do to search, traditional search. And now it's going to be more about not paying for search advertising, but for AI answer advertising, which puts up a lot of red flags about AI. That this is going to be, of course, immediately monetized, and AI is now going to be paid responses potentially, and that's a whole different issue that's really disturbing if you think about it. On when you think about all of the stories that we're being told how people supposedly use AI, and if that's going to be monetized, where answers are going to be delivered based on who's paying, well, you know, that's really a rabbit hole that can get very, very dark and can blow up fast. So we'll see where that goes. My answer to this is public relations. And in the first quarter of this year, I started commenting on the fact that public relations has really come back to the forefront. It has really surfaced um, again as a go to, as a pivot for executives that are very conscious of what is going on out there. Now, for many executives, I do believe, as I have been told myself in person, a lot of executives simply see the bottom line on their quarterly numbers, and they see what they're investing in different types of marketing and what they're getting on the return, and it isn't adding up anymore. If it ever really did, it's it's certainly the numbers are declining now to justify the investment. So there has been this pivot back to public relations and all the different things that PR entails. And what I would say as an answer to
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
what I would say as an answer to paid search is, you know, if you elevate the brand in all the different ways that public relations can do it, I would argue whether you are advertising in the New York Times, whether that, is print or digital, you're advertising on television or cable, you're advertising on a streaming service or a podcast. The truth to me is, the ultimate truth is, everything goes back to public relations. Just traditional, hardcore, tried and true PR. Because your brand, if your brand is solely a product, if your brand is just exclusively a service or a tangible product, whether it's an instrument, a tool, piece of hardware, software, or if it is something like a consulting service or accounting, a law firm, whatever have you, creative, right? Um, if that is all it is, and there's nothing backing up the brand, there's nothing backing up the service. Once that service has its first hiccup, once that product doesn't deliver for the first time, you're really hurting your odds of retaining that consumer. And the best of the best, just over, let's say, the last 100 years of the American Industrial Revolution, right? Uh, whether it was Ford or Kellogg, Kraft, it doesn't matter. Walmart, um, Coca-Cola, doesn't matter. Take the most prestigious brands, and you will notice not only have they over decades spent a lot of money on straight up marketing and advertising, but there is a very large PR apparatus that existed just as long, if not before, the advertising, and exists today to back it up. So, the conundrum about paid search and search in general is, it seems to be a declining channel for exposure, for brand exposure. Um, but it still seems to be one of the more affordable ones. But if the argument is, and it seems like this is what Jim Molika is saying, if the argument is my brand doesn't come up in general searches the way that I believe it should from the money I'm paying, my argument would be, well, you have to still elevate the brand. And I don't mean by pure marketing. And so for, for a large leading brand like Bose, right? Um, you question if PR is doing everything it can for Bose. And just on the surface of it, from me researching their website, looking at any news of the brand online and so on, it seems, well, this is a company that has a legacy. It has an established brand. It's known for high quality. It has its loyal consumers. But can it take the next step? Sure, I think it can take the next step. The next step would be doing a lot more to communicate the value of the brand, to communicate how those products are made, to share and personalize the story of the brand and the people behind it. And so I say this too for much smaller companies and small to middle market brands that don't have the capital that large brands do. And my advice to them is, as you map out your strategy for marketing, and if that includes paid search, and that includes some digital advertising, and if you can afford it, something even larger, then the best thing that you can do is to invest deeply in public relations. In public relations, when I say public relations to me means different targeted audience communication outreach. And that is from the general public so that you can expose your brand to the masses, to community, different communities, business partners, yes, even politicians, investors, and media. And there's a lot of ways to do that. And really today, the key, the key to doing this today is your website. And I think the good news for small companies, for emerging brands, for startups, is the fact that you don't need a ton of capital to manage, to create and manage and improve your key gatekeeper of your brand today, and that is your website. It's not advertising, it's not all of the marketing, it's your website. If your website is strictly commercial and strictly advertising, in my opinion, you're missing the point and you're doing it wrong, especially as you go into the younger demos, and let's say 30 and younger, and then especially college age to high school. Those folks have really grown up in a consumer world where they are looking way beyond the product. They're looking for what the product stands for, who's behind the product, the people behind the product, the innovation behind it, the history behind it. And I think overall, from what I see in my research and the feedback that I'm getting from uh, clients and people that I speak to, is that they see that across the board in all different age groups now. The days of I'm just going to purchase this particular product um, because I know the name is declining. In fact, just last week, here it's in mid July. Just last week, it was Kraft Heinz that
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Kraft Heinz that announced that they are going to split the company. One of the most high profile historic mergers in American corporate history. Kraft Heinz, basically the experiment is over and they're going to split the company. One of the primary reasons for that is a large percentage of its portfolio of product is not selling the way it used to sell. The name brand doesn't hold the gravitas or the appeal that it once did simply because of the name. There needs to be more behind that, including price point, which of course is a whole other, topic, which gets out of the realm of PR. In the sense of you got to control your costs, and if it's a name brand, we all know that you are paying for the packaging and you're paying for the advertising that that company is doing. um, but when you see Kraft Heinz announce that they're going to split, it's indicative of what's going on in the marketplace. And in that particular segment of retail, what is hurting legendary corporations like Kraft Heinz? It is the in-house store brand. And so you go to your local supermarket, your local large supermarket, and right next to the Kraft products are the in-house supermarket branded products, which today are not only lower priced, but essentially match in quality. Now, there was a time that a lot of in store branded products still had a ways to go in quality. But for the most part, that's kind of gone now. The quality is close enough. And for a lot of consumers, it's now the price point that matters. But that gets back to our world of PR and marketing and advertising that, well, obviously the Kraft name, having a Kraft logo on whatever the product is, or a Heinz logo on whatever the product is, isn't selling it like it used to be. And I'm making a point just using Kraft Heinz because this is happening in multiple industries, um, and with multiple brands. But I think part of that is there's a lack of PR today. And there has been such a pivot to focusing on things like search advertising, digital advertising, marketing, that the brand got lost in the marketing, if that makes sense to you. What I mean by that is there's so much emphasis on marketing the brand that the brand itself has kind of become lost. And worse than that, the product has been diminished. Despite the millions of dollars being spent on marketing, many consumers will argue that the product that they're buying isn't what it used to be. The quality has gone down. Um, Something kind of related to PR, of course, is the downsizing of making portions smaller, making the ketchup bottle smaller, the soda bottle smaller, the laundry detergent container smaller, but you're charging more money for it. And if that's not bad enough, people feel, whether it's true or not, the belief is, um, the perception is quality has gone down. So PR really is a starting point for a lot of things. It can communicate what the brand is about. It can communicate directly to the consumer that it relates to the consumer. It wants to connect to the consumer. I just wrote a column about executive communications today, in particular the CEO and CEO communications in an AI world. And one of the points I made in that column that you can find on the Substack newsletter for this podcast is that what's been lost is connecting to your customer, right? Customer service has been greatly diminished. The customer experience has been degraded, yet costs are up, right? So, brand loyalty, the holy grail for so many companies, brand loyalty has been not just suffering, but has been lost in a lot of ways. And public relations can take care of that. And just a few ideas that I always mention in these meetings that I have the privilege to be in is, your website can do so much, including it has a digital presence, right? So it is a destination. And on your website, you know, besides the standard inventory and library of content that not only sells and pitches your product and how great it is and why it's so great and why it's different or better than your competitors, but real life content of a consumer, a family, an organization that used your product and it made a difference. The people behind creating the product, improving the product, the research and development, the product or the brand in the community, the organizations that this brand is able to support, the nonprofits, the schools, um, the presence in the community, that the success of the brand is able to go back into the community. Offering executives, including the CEO, as a voice, as the personification of the company, and having those executives not hide in their offices or sit behind their desk all day and and act out the cliche C-level executive that is unattainable, not accessible, isolated. No, get out there, communicate, because you're communicating with your consumers, and let the people that are on the front line, everyone from the factory worker to the R&D person to the salesperson to the customer service person, put these people out there. They are your company too, they are your brand, and a lot of that has been lost today. So, just to wrap this up, I think there is such an opportunity right now, especially for smaller organizations, emerging brands. There is such a opportunity,
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
such a opportunity to cut through the noise today of the dissatisfaction that's out there. There are people I should say, there are a lot more people today who are more interested in feeling as though they're being heard as a consumer. They're being heard as your customer, and that their needs are at least being acknowledged. And a brand that does that, a brand that personifies its organization, that puts people to the brand, the people behind it, and then the people that are being helped by it. So it's not just a sell. That's one of the things that I wrote in this particular column that I just published called uh, AI CEO Communications in an AI World, which you can check out on GeneKingLive.com, as well as the Mediums, Messages, and More Substack page. And the whole point of that whole article was that communications, corporate communications, uh, needs to be elevated again. And that includes public relations because corporate reputation is taking a hit. And besides all of the brand issues that we've been discussing in this episode about how branding isn't selling the way it used to be any longer, and the brand doesn't mean sales like it used to any longer, that there needs to be more substance behind it. There needs to be more of a depth of meaning of the organization, any organization. Besides that, what's been lost is there's been too much of a hard sell. Everything is a sell. Everything is orchestrated and choreographed to the point where people tune out. And it's that commercial, it's that written ad, it's that blog, it's that podcast interview, it's that written opinion piece, it's that sponsorship out there in the general public that is genuine, that isn't just the quick, hard sell, that acknowledges real life, that acknowledges that a brand needs to earn your trust, needs to build its legacy, and it wants to. That's what stands out today. The sell, sell, sell world that we have been in for a while is tired. It's saturated. You want to stand out? Have a different message. And the message is be different. We hear you. We want to hear you. Here's the people behind our company. Here's what we stand for. Here's our goals and objectives. Our success means that we can do more in the community, and so on. Have the CEO out there and not do double speak, not do corporate speak or legalese or marketing. Have your CEO out there and talk about challenges in the marketplace. Talk about how the company is focused on connecting with the consumer and maintaining that loyalty. Talk about the innovation going on at the company, the research and the development, all of that stuff. That's what people are looking for today. Otherwise, if they can save $1, they're going to go for the other product. And there's no reason for that if you have a brand that has depth to it. So we'll see where this decision by Bose to pause search advertising for a while, where that goes and what the results have been. But I thought it was a good springboard to use to talk about the fact of, as people are debating the worth of paid search advertising and marketing in general, and branding and the investment in it, what's been lost, and there seems to be still not a lot of acknowledgement in corporate America, and worldwide too, is there seems to be still this isolation chamber mentality of it's not us. It's not us that our brand has been diminished by ourselves. It's not us that we've been focused so much on marketing that our brand hasn't moved forward into the present day. That we're so focused on paying for advertising and influencers and digital ads and podcasts and snappy campaign slogans and packaging, that we've lost sight that the price has gone up for what we're offering, and yet we're losing connection with our customers. So the overall argument that I have for all of this is you got to look at public relations and all of the things that public relations means. And to me, public relations is the instrument that builds depth to the organization, and therefore depth to the brand. And it seems it's growing that the consumer wants something more than just the product. They want to have a connection to the product. That used to be the way it was, you know, 50, 60, 70 years ago. That was part and parcel of a brand's existence, was making that connection to the consumer, speaking directly to the consumer. That seems to be lost and it needs to come back. Well, this wraps up another episode of our Mediums, Messages, and More podcast. I thank you very much for listening. I really appreciate it. The entire archive of the podcast, as well as the articles that I've shared and the columns that I've written, are on genekinglive.com. Also, you can go to Substack and just search Mediums, Messages, and More, and everything is there. The written content as well as the podcasts too. You can go to rss.com, and the podcast is there as well. Just search Mediums, Messages, and More. And the YouTube, although I haven't had a lot of time to do the YouTube channel work, I'm planning to do more on that. You can also find some YouTube videos for Mediums, Messages, and More on genekinglive.com as well. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Be well.
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai